VS Series, Vision Dashboard Overview. Load in and connect to the Vision Dashboard Simulator. There's a basic program set up ahead of time that's doing a pin inspection that will be used to give a general overview and demo of the Vision Dashboard function. So it's got a locator tool, the ShapeTrax 3A, a blob tool that's locating and counting the pins. We have a line detection tool that's creating a line, datum line down on the bottom of the target, and then a distance tool measuring the distance of the pin from that line. So we use this program example to show the general overview of some Vision dashboard functions. The Vision dashboard tab is right here. If you don't see the Vision dashboard tab, just go into the display menu, make sure it's turned on, and you can see it's here. It could be moved around as any of these tabs can, but locate the Vision Dashboard tab, and then the Image Viewer tab, of course, will show you the image, and we'll continue with this exercise. All right, the first function we'll show you of the Vision Dashboard is linking things like parameters, tool parameters like limits to the dashboard. So in our example here, we have several, 10 point distance tools doing a distance. We have no limit set for these tools yet, but we want them to have a shared limit. So that's one of the common things maybe the dashboard would be used for, is we can link the limits of this tool to the dashboard, and then they can all be linked to the same cells. That way you can have one set of limits for multiple tools. So first thing I want to do is I'll set up a chart here, or some cells here. So I'm going to click on the dashboard, and I'm just going to type in some text. So I'm going to call this pin distance limit. So you can put text to the dashboard to show what you're doing here. And of course, you can customize the format of the text. So we can make it bold. We can change the font. So here's the font, here's the bold, and then of course the colored style. So if you want to make this blue text, for example, and then if you want to fill in the cells. Now, there is no merge cell function, so I'm just going to highlight these multiple cells. Say you want to fill that in, so you can also fill that in. So you can freely enter text and customize the color and style as needed. Another thing you can do with data and text and other things in cells is the alignment function. So you can align them left, right, center, top, middle, and bottom. And of course, when you're dealing with text, you can have it wrap or overflow. So just to show you a quick example, let me make this, I'm going to make this cells a little bit bigger here. Actually, this cell. I'll make this cell a little bigger so you can kind of see all this text is in one cell. So again, you can left justify, you can center it, or right justify it. And then, of course, the top and bottom line. Right now we're middle line, but you can top align, bottom, etc. So you can mess around with the different formatting. So if you wanted to be top left, you can do things like that. All right, so we put this back to center and middle, and then, of course, the overwrap function. So I'm going to put this cell back to its size I had it before, and I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller there. And then we'll continue with our setup. Okay, so now I'm going to fix this text here so it's the pin limits, and I'll make it left justified. But now let's set the actual limit for the tool. So to do that, let's start with this tool number 4 here. We'll list the first tool in the list here, and then go to the properties of that tool. We're going to set the judgments. Like I said earlier, there's no judgment set yet, so we're going to put a pass-fail limit on it, and then we'll link that to these cells. So first, let's put the limit itself on the tool. So let's go ahead and just turn on these limits, and then we'll set an initial limit here, maybe 185 for the upper, and maybe 170 for the lower. Right now we're in pixel units, so right, we're dealing with pixel units, but of course things can be scaled. But for this example, we're just going to keep it in pixel units, and then we can adjust these limits as needed. But that's what we'll start with for the initial limits. Now, to link these to the dashboard, a couple ways you can do this. For one, you can hover your mouse over one of these items here, like the upper limit, and you can see the mouse turns to a little hand thing, a pointer. That means you can drag to the dashboard. All right, so anything that turns into that pointer means you can drag it. So I'm just going to click and drag and drop it where I want on the dashboard. You see right there. So it dragged the upper limit and lower limit text, so it's just a text box, and then it brought in the upper limit that we set, and then the lower limit. And you can see it also brought in the distance of this tool. Now I don't need this distance here. I don't really need that right now. I'm mainly interested in the upper and lower limit. So what I'm going to do is just delete that out of the way. So you can delete a row pretty easily just by selecting it and deleting the row. Of course, you could also insert row and other functions, but let's go ahead and delete the row because we don't need that. We just want the upper and lower limits. So now we need to also link these other tools to the same limits here. So another way you can link things are using the link icons. Let me select the next tool, tool number 5, and I'll show you another way you can link these items to the cells instead of dragging them. So again, I'm going to activate the limit, upper and lower limit, turn it on. Instead of grabbing it with the hand, you can also use this link icon right here. So I'm going to click that. And then you can multi-select items, or you can select a single cell. But if you multiple select, if I select both cells at once, it will auto-link both these to these cells here. All right, so I'm going to click OK. And then you're going to see now that these are also linked to the appropriate cells, so C3 and C4. And if you ever need to disable a link, you can just click this little X right here and it will disable the link to that cell. So let me fix that back. And then we are in business here. So what we'll do then is we'll just, for the next 8 of these, we're just going to simply copy and use the partial paste function to partially paste those limits in there. So I'm going to copy one of these tools that we just set up, copy, and then what we'll do is we'll select these destination tools here. Do this again here. I'm going to do the shift select. So highlight the items you want to partially paste to, and I'm going to right click and then partially paste just the limits. All right, so limits are in the judgment conditions here. And then I'm going to paste the judgment or the distance limits. All right, so I'm going to click OK. And after this partially paste function, you will see that now all these tools will be linked appropriately to the same cells. And to adjust the limits, all you need to do, or all the user needs to do, is come in and enter a value in the cell, and it will set the limit for all the tools. You can still set the limit in the tool itself as well. It's linked automatically, so it will also link it back that way. So they're all linked together, and they all have the same limits. If you'd like to, you can also set the number of digits for this cell here. So you can see we got 3 decimal places here. Let's say you only wanted 1 decimal spot. You can use this increase and decrease decimal spot function here. So if we want to decrease to just 1 digit, we just set that using that function. You can also set the general settings. So general, text, number, we can make this be a number. And again, we can set the digits. So you can set the formatting of the cells. Similar to any kind of spreadsheet program, you got a lot of the same kind of functionality there. All right. Okay, so another pretty common thing to do with the dashboard is to display the results of tools. All right, so for example, let's say you want to display the X, Y, and theta position of the ShapeTrax tool, which is locating the part. So maybe you just want to display the part location. So I'm going to put in some text, part location. I'm just going to leave the default settings here, but again, you can arrange or adjust the formatting. So let's say we want to drag or bring in the X, Y, and theta of the ShapeTrax. So one way to do that is to simply select the tool here, and then you can drag it in from the results tab down here. So if you notice, here's our X, Y, and angle position. So I'm going to multi-select these. I'm going to use Shift Select here to select all 3 at once, because you can drag multiple items at the same time, and then just simply drag and drop those in to, let's try this again. There we go. Now I got it. So drag and drop in, and again, you can customize this formatting I'll make this a little bit bigger so it stands out, the title. And now we have the X, Y, and angle position of our target being displayed on the dashboard. All right, okay, so once you start getting some items in the dashboard, you can also put borders around them for formatting here. So again, let's say you want to put some borders around here. You have your border function here. So top, bottom, left, right, no border, all border. So very similar to Excel type things if you're putting like a border in there, so you can set your color and style. Let's say you want to put an outer border around this top here, and then we're going to put an inside border around these cells. So you can, there's another nice formatting function that you can do to make things look nice and clean. And I'll do the same thing for this one. Outside border, and then we'll do an inside border. So you have plenty of options there, depending on how you want it displayed. Maybe we'll also fill this in, make it stand out here. I'll do a different color for this one, but you can see how you can easily build out a nice looking display so the user can actually see these results, and you can use this Vision Dashboard tab while it's in run mode, and you can interact with cells, of course. So any cell that's linked to a parameter, like limits, can be adjusted while in run mode. You can also link cells to certain tool parameters as well, if you'd like. So just as a simple example here, let me click the blob tool. And let's say you want to have the detection order be adjustable on the cell. So again, notice the hand turns to a little pointer. So if I wanted to be able to adjust the detection order of the blob tool in the cells, I can easily, oops, let me make sure I got that selected, drag that in as well. So we'll put this in the cell here. Once it's in here, you can change the cells, what it says. It's just a text file. So this is a text file, and then this would be a little drop-down menu. Let me move this cell over here. So you can see this is a drop-down menu based on the detection. It's linked to the detection order. All right, and that's the blob tool. So blob order. Let's just call it blob order, but you can change the text, what it says, and then by adjusting this drop-down, it will adjust the setting of the tool. So that could be a handy function as well in the dashboard. Now, if you want to disable that link, again, all you got to do is click that little X box to link it, but we'll leave that set in here just as an example. You can also easily click and drag and move things around as needed. So if I want to move this blob order that we just set up, all I got to do is select these cells, and then I can move them just like everything else. So I can move and drag these over, and the links will be retained. Just widen that up a little bit so you can see it better. And then again, we can, of course, change the color and style. Maybe actually we'll call this pin order instead of blob order. And then maybe we make it bold, and perhaps maybe get a different color so it stands out. So maybe we'll make this a bluish color, just for an example. We can also change that. So you can see it's blue now. You can also use the data validation function to create a list or even put limits on the range of these cells. So you can see the parameter here that we just added. If we click on data validation here, you can see this was just, it set it up automatically as a list of items. So you can see this was automatically all set since we dragged it in. But here's the item name, and then it's just passing that integer. So this is just an internal, but you could create your own lists if you want. We'll show a quick example of that in a minute, but you can also put a limit the range on these cells here. So for example, say this upper limit value that we allowed. Say you want to put a limit on that so they can only set it between a certain range. All right, so it's a decimal, so you can set the type, which is what we want. It's a decimal value, but it can also be an integer, so we're going to leave that. But let's say you don't want them, you want the range to be, you don't want it to be 0. You want to say the lowest you want them to set it maybe is, for the upper limit, maybe it's 175. And then maybe value 2, which is the upper range, is 200. So you're limiting the available range that parameter can be set for, that cell. All right, you can also set the step increment. So when you hit this little arrow thing, what do you want the step increment to be? So maybe we will make it 0. We can make it a 0.1 increment if we want, instead of 1. You can forbid the input when data is invalid, which is checked as a default. If you want to display a message when the cell is selected, you can put in some text here like set upper limit for example, give a little hint, and then we can put a range if you want to display this so they know it's limited. So for example, all right, and then this just applies to the changes to any other cells that were applied to the same rule. But I'm going to click OK, and you can see there's the hint. So when you select the cell, it shows that hint. And if they tried to set, or the user tries to set a number that's higher, you'll get a warning that's beyond the range. So, and then we'll repeat that or do the same thing for the cell here. So you can do the same thing here. We could go to the data validation, and this, since this is the lower limit, we can say the upper of this one, let's say, is maybe 180, and then maybe the lowest you want them to set it is, this is 150. I'm just making up some numbers, but you set this according to the application. If we want that same 0.1 increment, when you click the little arrows, we can do that as well. And then you can do the same thing here. Put a hint file, set hint text, set lower limit, and then again you can put the range between 150, 180 if you want, and then click OK. So you can see the hint function can be handy when you select that cell. Okay, let's show another example of a list. If you wanted to set up your own list, for example. So let's over here, like off to the side a little bit. Actually, you can hide it like off to the side if you want. Let's just put a list of numbers. Let's say you want that to be, you want to create a list, a selector list, so the user can just select. So to keep it simple, I'm just going to put some numbers in here for now. Let's do 4 choices. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say over here is where you're going to set, put your selection. All right, and then maybe select value. I want to put some text here. And then right next to it, we'll put our list. So I'm going to click this cell here, and we'll go ahead and go to data validation. We'll select, it's going to make it a list of values, and then we'll link our list to that range of values right here. So you can hide that off wherever you need to. You could do the same settings here, put a little message when it's selected. We're just going to leave that blank right now. Or actually, you could forbid when data is invalid, but it's a list anyways. So click OK. And then what you'll see is you have a drop down here where they can select the value, and then maybe that's linked to a parameter or some other setting. And then if you want to change the list, you can just go over here where you're linking to and change whatever the values you want. And you can see now I have the new selection. So that list can be changed, linked, and changed as needed. I used a number here, but it could also be text or whatever you want to put in the cell. Another thing you can do with a list in this example is, say you want these values, 100, 200, 300, 400, whatever it's linked to, but you don't want the actual number to display it. You want to put some text there. So I'm going to go back to the data validation, and you can use this function here, convert selected items to integer values. So what I can do here is I can put those numbers in, let's say 100, 200, 300, 400, but instead of the actual number there, we can put in a text. So maybe this, I'm just going to use some example like low, mid 1, mid 2, and then maybe high, just for an example. All right, so then the user, when they select the list, from the list, they'll see the text, but it'll use whatever the value is that you set in the data validation. And then again, whatever that's linked to, you'll show the value. So for example, let me just go below it here. We'll do equals this cell here, and you can see it has the value of 100 or whatever we select. So if I select mid 1, mid 2, you can see the value changes accordingly. So user sees the text, but it'll change to the value and then whatever that's linked to. Maybe that's a tool setting, maybe it's a part selection, whatever you have that linked to. Okay, so another way to bring in tool results is to use the data list tab. As a default, it's over here, hidden off to the side here. This is the data list. This is where you can access the tool settings, tool results. Label results are from multiple tools that have multiple detections, like the blob tool, for example. You have your main task stuff like pass, fail, things like that. So system stuff. So you can drag items right from this list into the dashboard. So in our example, let's say you want to display all the distance results in a chart and then make a chart of it. So I'm going to go to the number 4 here, tool number 4, and then we're going to drag in the distance. So we can locate the item that we want from this list and drag it from here. So I want the distance here, so let's drag this and let's put it in the dashboard right here. So that's the distance itself. So let's say you also want the judgment of that tool as well, right below it. So whether that passed or failed. So I'm going to also drag the judgment in right below it, and you can see it drags in the judgment here. So we have the distance itself. So we can, and again, this is text here, so we can change what it says if you want. So we can call this, maybe you want to say pin distance instead of distance. There we go. So say pin distance, and then if you can just leave, we'll just leave this, or you can just say judgment. We'll get rid of that too fast. So judgment. So here's our pin distance. You can see that's linked to tool 4 dot output dot distance. So there's the nomenclature. You don't need to worry about that because you just drag that right in, so it automatically sets that formula for it. And then there's the general pass. All right, so you can see that's what's going on. Basically, this is technically a formula, but it's linking to the tool results. And you don't, so in other words, you don't need to remember all this nomenclature, but you could technically type all that in, the dot and all that fun stuff, but no need to do that. Just drag it in, and so now we have our tool results. So if we want to, we can create a chart of all the distances. So let me put some more text here. Let's go pin number. So we'll put the pin number, and then we'll put a number 1 here. So this is pin 1, and this distance here. So let's say we want to center this, so it looks a little better. And now the nice thing with this dashboard and the cells is similar to Excel, where you can click and drag multiple items, and it will auto increment items as you go across. So in other words, like the pin number will auto increment. And the nice thing about results is if the tools are in tool number order, it'll automatically increment the tool number. So to illustrate this, I'll select these 3 cells, and I'm just going to drag all the way across here till we get through tool 13. And you can see it automatically increments the pin number, so you can see that incremented. And then you can see the tool results, the tool number also incremented appropriately. So now we have a nice little display here that has all the pins. You can also zoom in and out of the dashboard if you want by I'm using control mouse, the center mouse scroller. But you can see with a couple clicks and drags, we are now displaying, let me play through some of these images here. So you can see we're displaying all the tool results and whether they're pass and fails just with a couple clicks. So very easy to create custom charts here that display multiple results. Then, of course, we can clean up the font and color and all that as needed. So I went ahead and added some border and color to this so it looks a little better. To save some time, I just did that. Didn't show all that, but you can make that any color and style you want. Now, let's say you want to create a chart, a little line chart, or even a bar chart of this data, kind of like sometimes you do in Excel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the pin number and the actual value here. Go across the board here. Just select all those cells. So we want to plot the pin number and the distance. So we can do that by selecting those cells and then going to the chart function. So we could do line charts. You can do area charts, column charts. So very similar to what you can do in like Sheets or Excel, Excel type stuff. So we're going to do a simple line chart for this one, but you can do different variety of different charts here. But I'm going to just do a simple line chart. All right, and then it adds it in. And then once the chart is added, you can change the different formatting settings of it here. So I'm going to just change this to pin number on that bottom axis here, because this is pin number, or you can make it say distance, whatever you want it to say. If you go to the format, you got your title settings. If you want to put a title on it, you can see I can type pin distance, pin distances. So you can put a title, and we can change the font of that if we want. So you can format the style and formatting of this. If we go to the y-axis settings, you can also set the upper and lower range. It'll set that automatically as a default. But let's say you want to go in here and you want to put a max value of, let's say 240 in our example here, and then maybe a min value of 150 or maybe 140. But you can put a range on this chart to limit it. And if you want to label on the x-axis, you can also do that. So we can put that in here. All right, so that's, oh, well, I didn't mean to do that. We could put that on the, let me turn that off. I meant to do it down here. This one, the y-axis, distance. So if you want to display the y-axis, you can see we also can put a label on the x-axis if we want, but I'll leave that as is. Now, once you're done, you can click OK, and then you can freely move and resize the chart as needed. So once it's in here, it can be moved around and resized as desired. Another function that can be handy is memos. So you can put memos in the dashboard here. So for example, let me just select a cell here, and we want to say you want to put a memo in there. So insert memo. This little memo box. I'm just going to put some simple text in here. My memo here, or whatever you want to put in here. Of course, you can put other stuff as well. And what it will do is when you hover over that cell, it'll show you that memo. So memos can be a little handy thing. Maybe you can describe different settings and things like that, and you can see it's indicated by that red arrow. If you need to edit the memo, just right click, edit the memo, or if you want to delete the memo, or you can also hide memos and unhide them. So as a default, they kind of auto hide, but you can also make them pop up. Of course, there's a lot of built-in formulas and things you can do with all the data in the cells as well. So for example, let's say you want to do an overall judgment of just the pin distances. So in other words, I want to know pass or fail limit just for a pass or fail judgment just for the pins themselves. So what we can do is, again, I'll put some text in here, overall pin judge. And we have all the judgments here. We just need to link them together. So we can do a logic equation. So if I go to the next cell here, I'm just going to type in the equal sign. And we can do AND logic, or we can do OR logics. So either, depending on the situation, if you do OR, any one of these needs to be true. Any one of these, as long as one of these is true, it'll be true. We don't want that. We're going to use AND, so they all have to be true. In other words, they all have to pass for this to pass. So I'm going to use AND logic. So you can type it in and then click it here, double click, and you can see you just add the logical expression. So you can get fancy with this, or if you're just referencing cells, all you need to do is simply select these 10 true false cells, and it will OR those together. Let me just reselect that. So I don't want those. I just want the pass fails, and then click enter. So you can see it's the formula is displayed up top there, and it's going to AND those together. So you can see right now it's false because there are some failures, but if I go to a good part, you can see it becomes true because now they're all true. Now, if you want to have that dot, the green and red dot, that's under the conditional formatting. So it's just a conditional format. All right, so that's another function that you can do with the dashboard. So if I go to the conditional formatting here, we have a built-in formula that's specifically for true-false judgments. So you don't even need to create a formula. It's built in. So if I just select judgment indicator, it will automatically be green for true and then red for false. So that's a real simple conditional formatting. Now you can do other things with conditional formats as well. You can make new rules, you can clear a rule, and then you can manage rules. So for example, if I go to new rule, you can do things like 2-color scale, 3-color scale, data bar, icon sets, all kinds of stuff like that. But the judgment indicator is one of the built-in formulas that you can just select as needed. So as an example of a few more formulas, let's go to another cell here. By the way, you could click this button here to show formulas. If you want to show the formulas that are behind the cells here, you can toggle that back and forth. It'll show you what the formula is. And this is the insert function here. So if you go to a cell here, we can also insert a function this way. And you can search for the function via name, things like that. But here's the categories. You got date and time, math and trig, all kinds of different functions here. So a lot of things that you might find in standard spreadsheet formulas like Excel, things like that, where you can do max, min, average, all kinds of statistics. We got even VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, all those kind of lookup type stuff when you're dealing with text. String operations, if you want to concatenate strings together, things like that. We got logical, as you saw a couple examples, and, or, and if and then, and all that fun stuff. So you got a lot of different things that you can deal with formulas, including geometric functions, where you can do calculate angles and distances between 2 points, things like that. All right, so for this example, let's say you want to do a min, max, and average of the distance readings down here. So let's say, let me create another little chart here. Distance, I'll just call it distance data. And then we'll do max, min, and average, for example, here. All right, so to do the max, again, we could insert formula, or we can just type in the equal sign here. So I'm going to equal, and I'm going to type in max. And then you can see here's the list of functions that have the word max in them. And I'm just going to choose max, but you can also do max if s. That will account for any invalid data. So if you have any invalid data, you can address that. Whereas max will just simply do the max, but if there is invalid, it will also be invalid. So it just depends on what you want to do here. So I'm just going to choose max, and then I'm going to, double click on it first, and then select the range that you want to take the max of. So in this case, I want these pin distances, and I'll just hit enter. So now it's doing the max of those cells, and now I'll just repeat the same thing for min and average. So again, min equals min, and I'll double click on it, and then the same range. All right. And then again, of course, I'll repeat it for the average. Okay, so now we have the max, min, and average of the pin reading. So let me just reset, and then we'll just show you an example. I'll just run through some parts here, but it's giving the min, max, average of all that data. And of course, you can put borders and stuff around this, just like everything else. And we'll go ahead and make this, we'll highlight this so it stands out and looks pretty cool. So you have a lot of functions available to perform different functions. Again, I just want to show you you can see the function, show the function here. But again, just refer to the user manual for more details, but there's a variety of different things you can do with all the data once it's in these cells here. Another nice feature of the Vision dashboard is you can insert objects like images, buttons, and links. So we'll start with an image, for example. So you can insert the image of your choice. In this example, I'm going to insert a Keyence logo, but all you got to do is click insert, select the image file that you would like. JPEG, bitmap, PNG, and SVG files are compatible, and then you can just bring it in. And then once it's in, you can freely move it around and put it wherever you want. So maybe I want to put it on this, by this chart here, or wherever you want. You just move it around, and then if you want more, you just add another image. But images can be a nice little visual function of the dashboard. Another object that you could enter are buttons. So I'm just going to go down here, below the chart here, to the cell here, and we can make this cell be a button. So I'll go to insert object, we can make this a button. So what you can do is you can edit a region, a tool region, like the blob tool, for example, will do that. But or you can also execute a task, a subtask, things like that. Soft events can be issued from a button, and then commands. For more details on these items, refer to the manual, but we'll do a simple example of editing a region. So you put what you want the button to say, adjust, we're going to say adjust blob region, because we'll link this to the blob region or blob tool, and then you just simply link it to whatever tool you want them to have access to, so the user. So we can link this to the blob tool. So what I'll do is if you click this button, it opens the region menu specifically for the tool that it's linked to. As another example of a button, let's go below this. Let's say you want to issue a command like trigger. You want to make a button be the trigger, so to be able to manually trigger from the dashboard. So again, I'm going to go ahead and insert another button. We'll call this one trigger, and then we'll have this issue the trigger command. So issue command, and the command for trigger is TRG in capital letters. You can issue up to 8 commands with one button, but this would actually trigger manually the inspection. So buttons can also add a lot of functionality to the dashboard. Another object that you can insert are links. All right, so let me click to a new cell here, and you can also add links. And these could be external links to like a website or things like that, or they could be internal links. So for example, of an internal link, maybe you want to link it to the VS support site. So I'm going to type in VS support site, and then I've already copied the link that I want to the clipboard, so I'm just going to paste it in. But it's the keyence.com/support/user/visions. It's VS support site. So if I click OK, and then that will link directly to wherever you link it to. So you can see it open up this page, the support page. So links. Now, it could also be internal links. So what I mean by that is you can link it to other cells. So as you start building out your dashboard, maybe you have different sections here, like data display, things like that, and you want to be able to easily jump around. So what I can do is insert another link, and we'll make this an internal link this time. And maybe we'll call this home. So we'll link this to cell A1. So basically what you do is you link it to a cell number, and then when you click that link, it'll hop to that cell. It'll make that the upper left corners. And if I want to jump back to maybe, let's say the data, let's say it's B21, we go up here, let's create a link. We'll create another link. We'll call this chart for now, just for an example. Internal link, and then we'll link this to B23 or somewhere where it's near the chart, and then if you click it, again, it makes that the top cell. So those internal links can help jump around the dashboard, especially when you start getting lots of data and things on there that you want. Makes it a little easier to pop around the chart, the dashboard. As one more example is, say you can also link to files that are on your PC, and that's considered technically an external link. But for example here, let's say you want to link to the PDF user manual of the VS, which is available for download on the website. I already copied the link on my PC to the address, so I'm going to paste that in here. You can see it's the PDF file, instruction manual, and I have it on a location on my C drive. All right, so I just copied and paste that in, and let's call this user manual. All right, so with a click of this link, it will open up the user manual. It opened it up on a different page here. But you can see here is the user manual PDF. Again, that's downloadable on the website. The one that's built into the software is under the help menu, user manual, and that's the HTML-based manual. But you can also link to pages in there with links as well. But if you want that PDF manual, that's available on the support site, and you can download that. But that's just another example. It could be files located on the PC. As you start building out your dashboard with different functionality, you can also register templates. So for example, this distance data that we created with the min and max and average formulas, for example, say you want to save that as a template and be able to reference that in other programs or elsewhere in your dashboard. You can select those cells that you want to register and then go to this template menu, register to template list. All right, so you can see I have several different templates in here. I'm just going to overwrite this one in here. I got this template 2. You can see I have several example templates I've been playing with here. So I'm just going to save this as template 2. I'm going to overwrite this previous one to save that, and it's going to tell me I'm going to replace it. So it saved that as a template. So if you want to insert that template in another program or maybe somewhere else in this dashboard, just go to template and insert template. And you can see there's my template. I can bring it in and it brings it in. Now, it maintains the absolute reference of the cells that you reference. So you might have to relink to whatever cells that you're using, but it brings in the chart and formula. Okay, so there's also several built-in sample templates that you can use as part of the dashboard. So let me go to some space over here. So if I go to this insert template function, you can go to the sample folder. This is built into the VS Creator. So you get several built-in formulas. Select branch, we got some OCR related functions here, look up by table, format date. It's got a lot of different built-in things. One that's pretty handy is check tolerance. So if you want to put a tolerance or pass-fail limit on a particular cell, this has all the necessary elements in it. So I'm going to select that just for reference. And you can see it brings in this built-in template here. So what it is, basically, it uses the in-range function here to check to see if a value, input value, is in between a min and max. So what you can do with this is you can easily use this to put a tolerance on something. So for example, I'm going to go to this cell here. This is the input value. I'll make this equal to, it could be a data result from a tool, or it could be another cell. So for example here, let's say you want to put a tolerance on maybe the X position, just for an example of the pattern tool. So I'm going to make that be the input value. And then we could put a minimum value, let's say 1100, and then a maximum value, maybe 1200. But you would set that accordingly. And if this value fell out of range, you would have a judgment here and pass and fail. And then you can link that, output that, do whatever you want with it. But just one of the built-in templates that you can drag in or insert and use. So the templates can be quite handy. Another thing you do template-wise is you can export templates and import. So say I want to export this template. I can go to select them, go to the template menu, and export this to downloads folder or for what have you. You could send that to a colleague, send it to support or wherever, and then you can also do the reverse, then import that. So you can also export and import template files. A couple other things before we conclude this exercise here. You can toggle the grid lines on and off with this little icon right here. And then there's also a find and replace function. If you want to find a certain term or value or text, you can find it. You can also find and replace if you want. So that can be handy as well. And finally, one more function that I want to show you in this example here is the show links function. So if you click the show links function here, it will kind of highlight and show you how things are linked in the dashboard. So if I click on one of these cells, you can see this shows you the various links that references. All right, so as you click through, you can see the references. So that could be handy to view and monitor, see how everything all kind of ties together. All right, and then also the tools kind of also highlight showing the dependencies here. So that could be a handy little function as well as troubleshooting, trying to figure things out as well.